Hello again. Now for part two of Monopolies. Lay's potato chips. Nobody can eat just one. It's true. I just proved that. All right. So here we go. Now we're getting into the costs and the revenues of the monopoly. It's a lot like the perfect competitor. They have the market's a little bit different, but it's very similar. So hopefully, if you have a pretty good understanding of where we are now, this shouldn't be a big deal. Okay, so the total revenue for the monopolist is the same as any other firm. It's just price times quantity. The difference is that the monopolist can control both the price and the quantity. So average revenue is total revenue divided by quantity, just like it is for the perfect competitor. Average revenue is equal to the price, and all of that is exactly the same. The difference between a monopoly and a perfect competitor is the marginal revenue separates from the average revenue. So in a perfectly competitive situation, remember it's marginal revenue equals demand equals average revenue equals price. So for a monopolist, it's pretty close, except the marginal revenue is not the same as the average revenue price and all the other stuff. It's not the same curve. So because they have a downward sloping demand curve, and I'll explain that more in just a second. All right, so remember the PC is marginal revenue equals average revenue equals price. A monopoly's marginal revenue is less than the average revenue, and the average revenue is equal to the price. The reason that happens is that since the monopolist can control the price, because they're the only game in town, then what happens is it's called the output effect or the price effect. I kind of use them interchangeably. But what happens is when the monopolist wants to sell more, they can do that by lowering the price. So because they have control over the price. And remember that the perfect competitors, the price is just set. It is what it is. So if they want to sell less, they just cut on their production. If they want to sell more, they increase production, but the price stays the same. For these guys, because they can control the price, because there's no competition, then there's what's called the price effect, and it causes the marginal revenue and average revenue curves to separate, which gives them a different look graphically, and I'll go through all that in just a second. Okay, so again, the marginal revenue is less than the average revenue, and the average revenue is still equal to the price. Okay, so here is the monopolist's revenue table, and this will show us how the average revenue and marginal revenue separate as opposed to the PC where they stay the same. Okay, so here we come into we're Burning Man and we're selling gallons of water. So we come in the first day, we have a price of we have a price of 11. Now, why not, if we're the only producers in town, why don't we just sell them for, $100,000 a gallon? And of course the answer is that nobody will buy them because they're too expensive and they overshot their demand in terms of how much they could charge. So in this case, on day 1, or we'll call it day 0 so these will line up. So on day 0 they come in, they have a price of $11. They don't sell any gallons of water. Their total revenue is 0. Average revenue is non-existent, as is the marginal revenue. Okay, day 1, they come back. They lower their price now to $10 because they have control of the market and they can do that. So they lower the price and they sell 1 gallon of water. All right, so now we have total revenue of $10. Average revenue is total revenue divided by output. Marginal revenue is what you get for selling the next unit. So yesterday they sold none. Today they sold 1 unit for $10. All right, we come back on day 2. So on day 2, we lower the price again to $9. So we sell 2 gallons, and so now 2 times 9 is 18. That's our total revenue. Average revenue is 18 divided by 2. And then the marginal revenue, this is where it gets a little weird, is that you can see here that as they sell the next unit, the average revenue is just total revenue divided by output. So it's 9, it's just 18 divided by 2. But the marginal revenue is falling faster. And the reason for that is called the price effect, is that we can sell more units of water, but to do so we have to lower the price. As we lower the price, all the preceding units from the day before, all of those units also have a lower price. So the marginal revenue, like I just said, tends to fall faster because now it's called the price effect, is that we want to lower the price to sell more. You can do that, but now remember, each unit is worth a little bit less than the previous day when the price was a little bit higher. All right, so that's the price effect. And you can see here that the average revenue and marginal revenue are starting to separate. All right, we'll couple more here. So day 3, we come back, we lower the price to $8. We sell 3 gallons. Total revenue is 24. 24 divided by 3 is 8, so that's our average revenue. Now the difference between this and this is because of the price effect. You've lowered the price, you've sold more, but each one is worth $1 less than it was before. So the difference between here and here is 6, and that's your marginal revenue. All right, that makes sense, I hope. All right, now what happens here as we continue to lower the price effect is getting stronger and stronger. It's separating further and further from the average revenue. And there comes a point where the marginal revenue is equal to 0. Remember, the golden rule is that marginal revenue, marginal cost is where we want to produce or where we want to sell. All right. So in this case, by looking at this table, we can say that this monopolist should charge $5 per gallon. They would sell 6 gallons that day for a total revenue of 30. Their average revenue is still higher. I mean, it's better. So their average revenue is just 30 divided by 5, which is 5. But the difference between here and here is 0. When they've reached 0, they know that they've reached the point where marginal revenue, marginal cost is equal, and lowering the price further to try to sell more units doesn't make any sense because they're going to start to lose money. All right. So here is a graph showing the table, basically. No, it is showing the table. So you can see at a price of 11, they sold none. At a price of 10, they started to sell more. And what happened was the price effect made the marginal revenue fall faster than the average revenue. And this is just a graph showing what was on the previous table. Monopolies maximize profit by doing the same thing that the perfect competitor does, and for the same reason. And that is that they want to produce where marginal revenue and marginal cost are equal. Producing one more unit beyond that means that their costs will start to exceed their revenues. If they're under that and their marginal costs are less than their marginal revenue, then they can increase their production or lower their price, I guess you could say. They can increase production, and then what will happen is they'll gain more benefit than the cost they incur. So they do the exact same thing as the perfect competitors for the exact same reason. All right, this is about the 3rd time I've tried this because every time I get going on this, I get all excited, and then next thing you know, I've advanced to the next slide before I finish talking. So anyway, this is like take 3, I think. All right, so here is the monopolists' a demonstration of how they produce. The perfect competitor that we looked at earlier, so they have their situation is this. And this is their demand curve. This is their average revenue curve. And sorry, this isn't real cool, but that's what I got. This is their marginal revenue curve. And then this was also their price. if you recall. So this curve right here is what the perfect competitor looks like. For a monopolist, as we just discussed, their marginal revenue curve separates from their average revenue curve because of the price effect. So what happens is this falls faster because the marginal revenue is being affected as they sell more. They're lowering their price, but now they're selling all 5 that day at a lower price than they were selling 4 at the previous day. So what they do is they keep going upwards in terms of their sale and lowering their price until they reach the point where the marginal revenue is 0, where they've bottomed out. And what that means is if they produce one more unit, then the marginal cost is going to start to exceed the marginal revenue. So they don't want to do that. If they're down here somewhere, they'll want to increase output by lowering the price further. This is prior to what we just discussed, but they'll want to lower the price further to sell more units. All right, so that being said, they produce up to where marginal revenue and marginal cost intersect for the same reason as the perfect competitor. So they would produce up to point C. Now, what they have to do is figure out what price should we charge. Well, they have a demand curve just like the perfect competitors. It's just that the price isn't set like it is for them. So what they do is they produce up to point C, because that's marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Then they charge up to their demand curve. Then they charge up to B. This area right here represents the profit of a monopolist. That's how much money they make above that point of perfect competition. So monopolist profit is here, right? The thing to know about this with respect to the quiz is as follows. There's a graph in there that has like just lines going all over the place. And the question is, what would a monopolist, what would their output be and what would their price be? And so to answer the question here is their output would be at point C, or you'll have to line them up, but that's basically the question. So they're going to produce at point C, they're going to charge up to point B at a price of point E, right? So produce here, charge up to here, and the price is equal to this, right? So there's a question in the quiz about that. Let's see here. I think I'm going to stop and save this, and then I'll finish up. There's only a few slides left, but I'll finish them up kind of easy.